So this is Sunny, and he hasn't had a bridle on for the best part of 2-3 years. So I'm going to show you his old bridle today and why it never really fitted. And we're going to make up a new bridle for him so that when I bring him back into work soon, I know he's going to be as comfortable as possible, so he'll hopefully behave himself. So I don't actually have his old kind of day-to-day bridle anymore, but what I do have is his old kind of competition bridle, which he actually shared with Gabby, which is already a bit of a red flag. But generally speaking, before I look at any tack, when I come and do any bit and bridle fitting consultations, the first part, the stable assessment, which is what I'm going over today with Sunny. The stable assessment is obviously looking at him and checking him over. So I will do that first, make sure there's no twinges or anything anywhere, and most importantly I will check around his head and in his mouth, so it gives me a picture of if anything's going on. Obviously I know him and I know the issues that he used to have, but at the time I didn't know any better. This wasn't a cheap bridle, so it was still something that I thought was good for him. And bit-wise, he used to be in a bomber's happy tongue or just a straight mull and mouth hanging cheek, so quite nice bits, ones that are quite often highly recommended, but I know for him that they weren't quite suitable, which is one of the reasons he hasn't had a bridle on for such a long time, because when we were doing our hacking a couple of years ago, I actually just rode him in the jewellery because I wanted to get it sorted and do my course so that I knew I could do what was best for him. So I'm going to give him a check over now and we'll see if we find anything. So I'll often start along the neck, and you know, I'm not a physio or anything like that, but I'm just looking for any reactions basically. You know, does he react to any pressure that would indicate any issues with his back, with the saddle fit? Obviously he hasn't had a saddle on for about 2 years either, so hopefully there's nothing there. You know, is there any tightness anywhere? Do the muscles feel soft and relaxed? Which, yeah, a bit chunky, but yeah, that feels good. Sunny's always had a bit of extra muscle under here because he's quite short in the neck, so he braces quite a lot. Good boy. But that is something that I would note down because that can be related to the bit and bridle fit. So I would make a note of any tightness, any sore patches, any issues with reflexes, muscle tone, and you know, muscle where it shouldn't be. I obviously look at the feet as well because they could tell a picture. He literally had his feet done yesterday, so I know his feet are pretty good. They're muddy, but they're good. But the important bit then is coming to the head. So I tend to check behind the ears and kind of poll area first. Yeah, so he's a little bit tight this side. And when I find tight spots, I just kind of wait and see with very, very light pressure what happens. Now, like I said, he hasn't been ridden or done anything for ages, so stuff like this isn't always training related or equipment related. He could have slipped in the field and he's pulled something. Sometimes when horses have been tied up and they pull back, obviously that can make them sore up here as well. There's loads of stuff. It doesn't have to be anything significant, but again, it's something that I would note and say for a physio to look at. So I'm not here to fix those issues, I'm just here to see them, and then sometimes when you do put tack on, it makes sense as to why they're sore in those areas. So once I've done that, I'd come down to TMGA area, and again, I very light pressure and just look for any information, basically any changes in their face, in the blinking, in breathing rates, anything like that. He's quite happy here. Good boy. Don't be a fidget, or I'm going to poke you in the eye. See, and I know Sunny is a fidget, so this is the other thing. You have to take into account the context of what's going on. Sunny is, as I said, a massive fidget, and this sort of stuff, whether I was doing anything with my hand, he would be doing, but he's displaying differently to how he did up here. Good boy. Go chew. So once I've checked that, I would come underneath and have a little look have a feel underneath in the jaw and see if I can check for any kind of hyoid tightness. I talk a lot about the hyoid when I see people. It's a very important bit of the horse. Good boy. And it's like the TMJ, it's a big pattern setter in the horse. If they are uncomfortable under here, it can make them uncomfortable elsewhere, in very basic terms. There's lots of good research papers and good videos to watch about the hyoid that will go into a lot more detail than I would. Good boy. Again, he's got a little bit of tightness there, so I'm actually checking the right side here, and I'm just, with a flat hand, kind of very gently putting a little bit of upwards pressure, and then I tend to follow down the jawline gently and see if it gets worse or better as the jaw kind of narrows as it goes down towards the mouth. Good boy. But I would say there's a little bit of tension there. Oh yeah. Okay. I know. So I'm just going to check all of that on the other side, and then we'll come back around here and do the mouth. So I would say he's about the same both sides. Now, it's worth remembering as well, Sunny has just had a dental procedure where he had to have his mouth open for quite a while, a bit longer than a routine kind of rasp. And although he had breaks, that could be the reason that he's tight in these areas. Up here, obviously the gag has to be fairly tight. So for him, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that has been what's caused those little issues for him. Yeah, you're a bit uncomfortable, aren't you? What we'll do now is we'll have a look, and see, it's hard to explain because a lot of it is done by feel as well for his mouth. So what I'll often start with is actually looking at the alignment of the front teeth. Now, some are more cooperative than others. So he has a very slight overbite on the front. That could be related to some TMJ issues higher up. Again, something to be noted. So then what I'll do is start looking in the mouth. So first of all, I normally feel on the top of the palate. So his is very narrow and very sort of soft. The palate grooves at the top don't feel like they've got much depth to them. His tongue is spilling over through his teeth a little bit. Sorry, Betty. I thought you'd be more happy about this, but clearly not. Good boy. He's got quite big prominent canines, which obviously I knew anyway, but not all geldings do, and some mares have them, so you have to check. Okay, yeah, you can see, hopefully, his tongue is just a little bit coming out the side there. He's got fairly fleshy lips, so... And although I'm not going to look at bits today, this is all part of the stable assessment. I check all this and have a little look at everything before we tack up anyway. So yeah, he's got quite an arched palate, quite a narrow palate. There's not much room in there. And I'll check on both sides just to make sure there's not any nasties in there anywhere, like a cut or anything like that, or a weird tooth in a weird place. Good boy. And then I'll check the bottom, so the bars of the mouth, which are between the two sets of teeth. And some horses, these can be quite sharp and don't have much covering. He's a fairly fleshy, so he's not as sensitive on the bottom there as some horses would be, but he has a lot of fleshy lip on the bottom. And actually, the problem that he has, and that I've always kind of known, he's got very, very little space for a bit, because his canine is here, where my thumb is at the moment, and then his teeth start here, so he's got the tiniest amount of room. And for him, I wouldn't choose to put him in a linked bit anyway, because it wouldn't suit the space he's got in his mouth, I think. It wouldn't be the first thing I tried him in anyway. But we're not doing bits today. It gives me an idea if there's any issues going on in the mouth, kind of what things are like. And actually, the one more thing that I do check for, and again, I know with him, I'll just have my finger run, or my thumb run along his tongue. He's not got a very wide tongue. Good boy. I know, I'm so horrible. But his grass muscle, so the genioglossus muscle, which is basically the muscle that sends all the grass and all the food they eat to the back of the mouth to be swallowed, is quite low down. And that's where we've had issues in the past, I think, with bits interfering with that and him kind of sticking his tongue out constantly. Not necessarily evading, but it's an automatic kind of motion that his tongue needs to do something because it thinks there's food in there. Will you stop? So I've always known that's been a bit of an issue with him. I haven't ever really felt in his mouth because, like I said, when I was doing more with him, I hadn't done my course, I wasn't doing bitting and bit fitting and bridle fitting, so I had no real reason to. But yeah, your tongue's not very big, is it? But we'll cover all that in the next video. Right, so what I'm going to do is get his old competition bridle and we'll pop it on and I will show you everything that's wrong with it, and it's quite a lot. So this isn't the bit that he used to be in. Like I said, he was in the bombers or the hanging cheek. This is probably what I'm going to start him in when I do start back in work with him, as a kind of tester to see what's going on. So I've left that on there. That is Dusty's bit. So before I even put it on him, the thing that I want to talk about is nosebands that thread through. So whenever you've got a noseband that threads through the brow band like this, whether it goes on top, whether it goes all the way underneath, you are adding pressure to the TMJ area, which we want to completely avoid. So you'll see a lot of kind of anatomical bridles and the likes now are monochrome headpieces, which is what I've got to fit to him, so that you avoid that basically. So that is the first thing that is wrong with this bridle off the bat. So let's pop it on you. Don't think you're going to run away, but wide. So he wasn't the last one to use this, so I might have to make some adjustments to it in terms of the cheek pieces and stuff, but it's still not going to fit. So if we start with the noseband, nosebands want to be fitted at least a thumb's width down from the facial crest here. We've got a nerve opening under here, and we want to, and you can kind of feel it on him actually, just about. So we want to make sure nothing sits on that. So you see a lot of people with nosebands up here, plus done it really tightly, and that is just going to give your horse a lot of irritation, a lot of pain, and not be very nice. So noseband length, at least one thumb's width, maybe a little bit more if you can, to make sure it's not interfering with that. Now, noseband tightness is obviously the next thing, and this is something I know with this bridle was never good. So on the loosest hole, and actually I've added 2 holes into that by the looks of it. So the loosest hole is that, which is way too tight. So you always want to test noseband tightness. Sorry, we're very close. You always want to test noseband tightness on the nasal midline, not under here and not here, because this is soft, so you can push your fingers in. It has to be here, and it should be 2 fingers that way. I can hardly get a finger in. So if I undo it, I'll show you where it kind of should be done up, and that was on the loosest hole for this bridle. So yeah, it should have been roughly about fitted like that. If you turn his head, you can probably see a bit better. And that is not even touching on the latch. So not good on that front. The next thing I would look at is buckle placement. Now actually, this isn't as bad as I remember it because he has a slightly bigger head. On Gabby, who this was originally bought for, the buckles were all the way at the top. And again, you then get bulk at the TMJ, you've got these digging in. They can also affect their sight because they're in the way. You know, you've got all this clumpy stuff up here, and that can potentially make your horse a bit spooky as well as being uncomfortable. So we don't want any buckles past the corner of the eye. So they are a little bit high, so they are a little bit long. So these cheek pieces should be shortened. The noseband should be shortened that way. And this is the other issue. So this noseband is too tight for him around here. So you'd want to go up a size. That would make this bit way too long, and then you've got buckles up here. So it's really hard to get an off the peg bridle to fit. So his brow band is actually quite nicely shaped. It's got a bit more of a shape to suit the arch of his head, but it is a little bit small. So it's a bit tight here, it's a bit tight here. And what then happens is it pulls the headpiece into the back of the ear because it's too tight. So even if this was a nice shaped headpiece, which it isn't, if the brow band was too tight, it's still going to cut in here. So that is another kind of 2 things in one that you would look for. If that's the only issue with the bridle, then just putting a bigger brow band on often fixes that, and then you're fine. But like I said, this actually, the headpiece doesn't really suit his shape. The splits are way too high up on the actual bridle, on the straps down here. They probably should start about here. So the last thing I check is kind of tension up under the pole. And this actually, sorry, I'm trying to stick my fingers in his ears. This actually isn't too bad, but that's because I don't have the noseband done up. So you have to remember to check this with the noseband done up. So what I'm looking for is I should be able to get a whole hand's width under there nicely, so that when the horse is working and they're flexing, obviously that becomes slightly tighter. You think if it's tight at this stage, imagine how tight it's going to get when they're working. So a good hand's width under there. So that is something to be aware of as well. Whenever you tighten your noseband up, it will tighten the headpiece at the top. Now we know all the reasons that this doesn't fit. I think I've covered everything. I haven't gone into bit placement because that is something I will do in the next one, but that can obviously vary your cheek piece length. If he, say, was in a hanging cheek, which is very likely for him, then no. Then that's going to bring the buckles up even further again. So you have to bear in mind what bit you're going to use is important to what bridle you're going to fit, and that's why those two things should go together. You can't really do one without the other. So usually I would do the stable assessment, check them over, you would tack them up in all their normal gear. I'd have a quick look at the bridle, quick look at the saddle, make sure everything's okay, to go and have a ride in, and then you would ride in your normal tack, because it gives me an idea of everything that's been going on, and then we change one thing at a time in the ridden assessment, so we can kind of create a picture of what's been wrong. I'm not quite doing that today with Sunny because I know that bridle doesn't fit. I want to start him back in work in the best possible way, so I'm going to fit him up for a new bridle. Like I said, I will probably start him in that bit, but that doesn't mean I'll continue in it. So we'll probably do a bit fitting once he's back in work a little bit. I don't think it's fair to go up and do that straight away for me either. Stop, bad boy. So what I will do first is headpieces. So I use the Horsemanship Saddlery bridles. I'm also going to get some Henry James bridles as well. And the reason I like those two brands is because everything is so changeable. The Horsemanship Saddlery, there is loads and loads of different shaped headpieces, which is great in itself. There's loads of different nosebands. I never fit flashes, grackles or drops because they're just hiding something, in my opinion. There's another issue to be addressed. That could be bitting, could be bridle, could be training. Won't go into that. I'm going to start with the pony size. So this is an Avante, which is quite wide at the top, and this is the Saturn stop, which is a little bit thinner. So we're going to have a little look and see which one kind of suits his head shape better. But actually, I think he's probably going to need a cob. We shall see. So the Avante sits quite nicely away from his ears, which I like. And actually, he's not as wide up through there as I thought, so the pony size might be okay. Quick look at Saturn. I do at the moment only have these two in the pony size. I've got about 5 in the cob, which is typical. So I'm looking to see how it fits through the top. See, thank you. Obviously behind his ear as well. Stand still. And kind of how the hangers sit. So I think for him, when he's got a bit on, it's going to make this hinge slightly too far forward. So the Venus, which is the same shape headpiece as this, but the hangers are at a slightly different angle, would be better. But I actually think we might go with the Avante, though we might have the same issue. A bit like saddle fitting, you kind of need to see the whole picture. Like one bit might work on its own, but once you're girthed up or you've got a bit in, it can all change. But that's what I'm going to start with. So I'm now just adding a noseband. I think the pony size will actually fit him because it's slightly bigger, and like I said with the other one, if I go to a cob it might actually end up too long on the other straps. So what you'll notice with monocrown headpieces is that noseband straps actually go on the front, and then your cheek piece straps, will you stop? Cheek piece straps go on the back, so make sure you've got them the right way round. Some bridles might differ, but just double check you're putting stuff on the right one. So we're just going to plonk this on him. Have a quick look. So already I'm going to drop that down a hole. I've chosen the most uncooperative pony to do this with. He gets bored so quickly. So I've dropped that down a hole. Let's have another little look. So that's sitting better. Stop on his face. Just double check. So that, in comparison, is the last hole on this one. So hopefully you can see that difference below, and certainly if I come up here, that's kind of normal. And that is still a pony size, and this is what makes it so difficult, because a pony size in one brand is not necessarily the exact same size in another. Right, so we can do that up a little bit. So I often pop the fingers under here and see where I can plonk it. See, the looser the better, but I appreciate sometimes they don't look super tidy if they're really loose, and sometimes they can rotate. We don't want that. So I'm quite happy with that. That's good. So this is the pony brow band. Obviously we're a bit mix and match in colours because that's just what happens at a fit-in. Obviously you would order the colour that you want. I mean, it's not as tight as the last one, but I think I'm still going to go up a size. Brow bands and nose bands realistically are just there for decoration. They shouldn't be doing anything. Starving. So I'm just going to pop the next size up on him, which is this one, and you'll notice these bridles have the click on brow bands, which just make life so much easier. There, change, don't have to undo everything. That's a lot better. It's a little bit more space in there. Obviously we've not got a bit on yet, so all that's left is cheek pieces and a bit. So I'm gonna go with the pony cheek pieces. So at the moment, everything is pony bar his brow band. I did wonder whether he might be in a cob noseband, but as you can see, when they're actually the right size to actually fit a real life horse, you don't need the next size up. And you can see our buckles, a good hole below his eye, so we don't have any interference up there. And obviously the noseband, like I said, it's a monochrome headpiece, so it attaches on both sides, so there's nothing extra running up over the top. So I'll put cheek pieces on first before we put the bridle on. I tend to start on around hole 3. That's just me, whether that actually means anything. And I always go for buckles, not billets, because billets face into the horse and actually you get an uneven surface then, whereas the buckles face out and you've got more of a flat surface against their face then, which is just a bit more comfortable. So it depends on the horse as to how we then do this bit. Some of them are fine kind of putting it on like this. Some I might take the whole lot off and we put it on kind of normally. You know, there's no right or wrong way at this stage. Whatever the horse is happy with is fine. Just don't strangle me with your lead rope. Now I haven't put the detachable throat lash on him, just because that's my preference. They do come with one, and obviously if you're competing you need one. I'm not going to go through bit placement in this video. I will do that when I do his bit fitting in the next one, but that is important. It's different in all horses and they do have like a preference themselves. With this bit you can see we're just on the line. Now these are the smallest cheeks you can buy on this brand. If I was having to put them up again, I'd probably just send them to a saddler to get them shortened. That would be the best thing, realistically, especially if, like I said, he ends up in a hanging cheek. It's going to go up at least another hole, maybe even 2 again, and we're going to be back to being too far up his head. So as they are just okay. They're on that 5th hole up and they're at the maximum they can be, basically. With this bit, we might find a bit that he likes, actually we can lower it, which would be even better, but who knows. So we'll tuck you in. That is the kind of stable assessment / static fit of the bridle done. Like I said, this part would normally be done after I'd seen someone ride in their normal tack, but Sonny's a special case at the moment because he's been out of work and I want to start him in a nice bridle, restart him in a nice bridle. But that's a much better fit than the bridle that we had to start with, and it's much better than his old everyday bridle because that was even worse. We've got buckles in the right place, nice loose noseband, nice loose brow band, a headpiece that fits okay. This may change when we start riding because I might see it's moving a little bit or it's not quite how we want, which is why there's lots of different shapes. bridles shouldn't have just one shape of anatomical headpiece. There should be an option, because like his head shape is completely different to say Gabby's, like they are not the same, or to some of the bigger ones, so there should be a variety. We've got good clearance up here as well, so that ticks all the boxes in terms of what I would look for in fit. The next stage would be whether he's happy with it all under saddle, which when I've actually done some more work with him will be next on his list, so keep an eye out for that. We will see you soon. Now you can take all this off now. Thank you. You're so naughty. And you. Honestly.